The old man put his fingers in his ears to soften the extreme loud noise. "Now that's better," Bruticus said as he stepped over to the old man who began cursing at him. "Who the hell are you and what do you want?" The Dark Lord looked at him and the others and spoke. "I am Darth Bruticus, Supreme Master of the Sith." The old man looked at him funny. "Supreme Master of the, what? Who are the Sith?" he asked, deactivating his lightsaber. The Dark Lord looked at his droid in wonder and back at the old man. "The Sith are the enemy of the Jedi. For millennia we have waged war against each them, and the Sith are more powerful than the narrow-minded. Worthless, corrupt Jedi." The old man looked and listened to the Dark Lord and shook his head. "No, I'm not interested in joining your narrow-minded, worthless, corrupt Sith, so go away and leave me alone." Darth Bruticus turned his back to the old man as he unclipped his lightsaber, turned it on and swung it down over his head. The Dark Lord sensed his move and used the Force. He turned around and the man's arm froze in midair. "I guess you thought that you were going to kill me that easy. I'm not that easy to kill, and certainly not by a worthless crybaby Jedi wannabe." He let his Force grip go of the man and watched him fall down on his face. "What's wrong, you gonna cry?" Darth Bruticus said as the man got up to his feet. The man stood there looking at the Dark Lord, who closed his eyes and spoke. Yes. I can feel your anger and your hatred. Come on and kill me." The old man Force grabbed his saber, turned it on and charged the Dark Lord. Darth Bruticus opened his eyes and grabbed the Jedi's hand, planted his head in the man's chest and thrust his own lightsaber in his throat. The man started choking and the Dark Lord put up his hand, sending a fireball to the man, hitting his chest and exploding him in bloody bits that showered the fallen Jedi standing around their so-called leader. The remaining Jedi stood still in awe. They had never seen anything like this before and were fascinated by the power of the Sith. MZ-12 walked over to the Dark Lord and said, "I think you've found your new army, my lord." Darth Bruticus walked around the fallen Jedi and said aloud, "Looks like I've found a bunch of inexperienced Jedi rejects. Yes, I have." He approached a small group and asked them, "Who wants to learn my teachings? Who wants to destroy the Jedi for what they did to you by throwing you out of the Order?" He looked around and saw hands raising into the air. He grinned. "Good, now let's go," he said as a young boy ran over and tugged at his cloak. While they were walking up the steps to enter the castle, the Dark Lord stopped and looked down at the boy. "Is it possible to learn that power that you did on the old man?" the boy asked. "Not from a Jedi. But you will learn it from me," Darth Bruticus said as he placed his hand on the boy's head and quickly read his mind. He gave an evil smile and got up. He led the boy to the castle. Korriban space passed. The Republic ships came out of hyperspace and they saw the damage that was done. Grand Master Jedi Siko Barak stood on the bridge, pounding his fists against the glass and screaming, "Bruticus, I'll get you for this. I won't rest until you're dead." He hit the glass so hard that it cracked it and broke his hand. A few masters tried to comfort him, but he pushed them out of the way and headed to the infirmary. The Jedi landed on Korriban and begun assess the damage. 75 soldiers and 6 Jedi perished on the Sith planet, and every ship was damaged in the vicinity of the Dark Lord's attack. As the recovery crews scavenged through the rubble, they found and arrested 12 Sith slaves. "Let's take them to the destroyer and await the Jedi's orders," Commander Killdeer said as he and the troops hauled them off. They entered a troop transport, secured the prisoners and went into space. The Grand Master was walking around the temple looking at the rubble and said, "Well, nothing lived. That's good." A few masters looked at each other and couldn't believe what the Grand Master said. A trooper stopped in front of the Jedi and said, "Grand Master Barak, we captured a dozen Sith slaves and they are leaving the planet now for interrogation." The Jedi Master looked at the trooper and said, "Where are they? They are in extreme danger." The Grand Master Force ran to a starfighter, got in and left the planet in pursuit of the prisoners. Followed by the entire strike team, the ship was nowhere to be found. "Run a scan. I can't find the ship anywhere," the Grand Master ordered. "Spread out. Everyone." The ships deployed from the destroyer in addition to the strike team's search. After a few hours, a trooper contacted the Jedi. "Master Jedi, I've found the ship. I'm intercepting now, sir," the Grand Master yelled. "No, do not intercept, we don't want another missing soldier." The orders were given and the galactic destroyer intercepted the missing ship using a tractor beam and bringing it inside the ship's hangar. The ships were recalled to their destinations and the Jedi landed on the destroyer to deal with the situation. Master Alana called for the Republic Elite Investigators or REI to search the ship. As they arrived, the ship's doors were removed and 2 armed brigades surrounded the ship. 3 REI entered and immediately left as the mere sight made them sick. Master Alana saw Siko Barak and ran to him. The elite all got sick after seeing the inside, but the ship is clear, she said to him as he started laughing and said, quote, "They all got sick but the ship is clear. How would they know that if they are getting sick? They weren't in the ship long enough to examine anything. I'll go take a look and you can come with me." Alana nodded her head and walked over to the ship's entrance as Siko passed the elite and said, "Wow, that's really chunky. What the hell did you eat today? I'll bet it tasted better going down," he said as the elite started throwing up once again. When Master Barak got to the entrance, Alana spoke. "Do you delight in saying things like that?" Master Siko said. "Let's go," as he entered the ship. Alana followed behind him and they turned to the right and saw a naked trooper staked to the wall, his clothes ripped off of him, blood all over the walls and floor. Master Alana covered her mouth and left the ship. The Grand Master closed his eyes and held up his hand over the trooper and started to meditate. He could hear Commander Kildare speaking to him. "We are all dead. They killed Master Jedi. Bring them to justice so that we may rest in peace," the voice said as it faded away. The Jedi opened his eyes and spoke. "We will bring them to justice, son. I will see to it personally as Grand Master of the Jedi Order. You have my word on that." He closed his eyes again and heard the soldiers speaking together. "Thank you, Grand Master. Thank you." The voices faded away once again and the Jedi continued his search and investigation. He tried not to slip and fall in the blood puddles as he made his way to the cockpit. Both pilots were dismembered in a bloody mess on the floor. There was no way to identify them at all. Siko spoke into his comlink. "Send in the investigation droids in here at once. Maybe we can get something done other than getting everyone sick, and tell them to be careful. There's blood everywhere." The Jedi walked around the entire ship and saw that the entire crew was killed violently. Why, he wondered. As he was leaving the ship he saw a message written in blood on the wall. The droids flew in and started taking pictures and video of everything. The Grand Master stopped and was staring at the message when a droid ran into the Jedi. "Are you okay, sir?" the droid said. Barak came out of a trance and smiled at the droid. "Yes, I'm finished here," he said, leaving the ship. The droid looked at the wall and read the message aloud. "Just a little present to the Jedi from Darth Bruticus, 1.200.002 years A.B.Y. Valley of the Sith. New Korriban Temple. 2 years had passed since Darth Bruticus had offered his teachings to the fallen Jedi. They had all accepted the Dark Lord's offer after seeing his wrath on one of their own. Now there were 4,500 apprentices. The Dark Lord refused to promote anyone to the rank of Master so early in their training. Instead he had traveled across time and summoned a few masters that were very loyal to him and the Sith and brought them to train the apprentices. They were the most deadliest Sith masters to ever live. The Dark Lord had such notable Sith as Lord Sin, Darth Lucratus, Darth Taba, and Darth Zykus. With these masters the Sith would cover the galaxy in darkness. If they all survived he would take them back to his own time and wage war against the Jedi in his own time. Darth Bruticus was walking around the temple gazing at the classrooms and watching the various men and women training. He sat down to rest as Darth Lucratus saw him and was walking toward the Sith Supreme Master. "You are a very hard man to find," Darth Lucratus said as he sat down next to the Dark Lord. Darth Bruticus patted him on the back and said, "How does the training go?" "Well, I presume," Darth Lucratus nodded and said. "Yes, they learn faster than anyone I've ever taught before. I've even called for more Sith slaves to assist me in their training. They should be here in a few hours." Bruticus nodded his head and replied, "Good. Good." He shut his eyes and started to meditate as Darth Lucratus got up and walked away. He received a message from his slaves who got away and went into hiding. Using the Force across space and time, Darth Bruticus smiled and laughed aloud. He opened his eyes and looked around. No one was around and the Dark Lord closed his eyes once again and concentrated on sending a new message for the slaves to carry out. Something to keep the new Grand Master Siko Barak in suspense. Jedi Temple. Naboo, past. Grand Master Jedi Kalana sat in the council chamber all day by herself thinking. Wondering, meditating on where the fallen Jedi had gone to. It was like the dark side had gotten stronger, or maybe she had gotten weaker. It wasn't in the Jedi's nature to kill a Jedi who had fallen from the light unless he, she or they had become a threat to them. Out of all the 6 temples throughout the galaxy, not one Jedi had ever heard of the Sith in over 1,000,000 years except herself, and she was getting very tired of being a Grand Master Jedi over 350,000 Jedi. She wanted to get away for quite a while. Maybe even leave the Order entirely. Master Kalana, come quick. Look at this, a youngling said as he entered the council chamber and interrupting her meditation. John, I thought I told you to get on with your studies. I am trying to calm down and have some time to myself, and you are not helping me. Now what is so important that you have to barge in here and bother me, she said. John looked down at his feet and mumbled. Nothing, I guess. He turned around and walked out of the room. Kalana nuzzled herself back into her chair, and using the force she locked the doors and was getting comfy in her chair when the intercom started buzzing. She let out a deep breath and said, "Yes, now what?" A woman's voice spoke. "I'm very sorry to bother you, Grand Master, but John has had an accident." Master Kalana sat still in her chair and didn't move. "What now? Did he trip over his feet again?" the Jedi asked. "No, Master, he jumped off of the balcony and fell to his death," the woman said. "It's about time. I got tired of his constant complaining," Kalana said as she sat in the chair and played with her hair. "What did you say, Master?" the voice asked. "I said I'll be right down," the Jedi Master said, and fell asleep. Seconds turned into minutes and minutes turned into hours as the Grand Master Jedi slept. After a few hours, a Jedi used the Force explosion on the doors and showered the Grand Master with the remains. He entered the council chamber and found Kalana asleep on the floor. The Jedi Guardian ran over and woke her up. What happened?" she said as the Jedi helped her up. "Where was I supposed to go?" she asked, fixing her hair and straightening her robes. The Jedi Guardian said, "You were supposed to see to John, who committed suicide." Master Kalana stood up and said, "Oh yeah. Now I remember, that little worthless crybaby bastard couldn't take it, so he hopped off of the rail and became one with the Force. Is there anything else?" The group of Jedi looked around at each other, and the senior Jedi was about to speak when the Grand Master spoke again. "Look, that's all I deal with anymore. Suicides, murderers. It's getting old. I'm tired of it, and I want to take my money and leave this crap and worthless band of misfits. I've made up my mind. I'm stepping down as the Grand Master Jedi." The Jedi looked at her in horror as she walked by and headed for the lifts. The Jedi Masters followed her and spoke. "But you can't," they all said at once. Kalana held up her hand and stopped the Jedi in their tracks and said, "Don't try and stop me. If you follow, I'll kill each and every one of you." She turned around, got on the lift, and headed to the hangar. The former Grand Master exited the lift and entered the hangar, looking around for a ship. She couldn't decide which one to pick. The PX-300 Starfighter was a ship that most Jedi chose to fly, or she could pick the RT-1200. It was a ship that most Jedi chose not to fly due to its electrical breakdown. Instead, she chose her personal starfighter. The AM-421. It could defend itself from any ship in the galaxy. Kalana entered the ship as 50 Jedi ran into the hangar. She fired 2 Raptor 4X missiles at the group and flew out of the hangar and toward space. Master Zune used the Force and turned the projectiles around, and they locked onto the starfighter and flew away toward the former Grand Master. Flying over the woods of Naboo, the Master's ship caught the missiles on radar and automatically increased its speed and outran them as they fell to the ground and exploded in the woods. She continued on her way. 1.200.000 years. A.B.Y, Jedi Temple. Coruscant. Siko Barak lay awake in bed wondering how Darth Bruticus or his slaves attacked armed troops. The Sith slaves weren't known to obtain the powers of the dark, at least not the power to murder Republic troops. He got out of bed, bathed, got dressed and left his room. Walking around the temple, he still could not believe that he was the new Grand Master and his lifelong best friend was gone. As he walked, he saw some masters patrolling the halls in search of curious Padawans that try to sneak out of their rooms. He looked up and saw the stars in the sky. I can't believe that I'm the new Grand Master, Siko said to himself. I just can't believe it. He looked around again and saw Master Alana looking for him. He tried to duck behind the rail but it didn't work. She saw him and began running. She slowed herself down and finally stopped in front of the Grand Master. You again. If I wanted a secretary or a messenger I would have contacted the Senate, Siko said sarcastically to her. Oh ha, ha, ha. That's really funny, Alana replied catching her breath. Our spies have indicated that the Sith slaves are on Anshan and Ilum. I've summoned 2 strike teams of 6 troops each, they are assembled and ready to. She was cut off. So tell me something. You've assembled 12 troops to hunt down 12 Sith slaves that brutally killed 12 troops and Commander Kildare who has over 40 years experience in the Republic Navy. What part of that don't you understand? How long have you been a Jedi Master? Because you don't act like you know anything. Master Alana turned around and walked away. Stop, he said. She turned around and had tears in her eyes and running down her face and it didn't fool Siko. If you are going to cry because of what I said then think of this. You're sending those troops into the slaughter. First you ask me or the council and get input on the subject. Second you summon the troops. Then you get the proper intel that they need to complete the mission, then you deploy them. Finally you send them to attack. There are many steps you need to properly complete a mission, we don't just bomb the hell out of them and come home and celebrate. Do you understand now? The Grand Master said softly. Yes Grand Master. I understand and I'm sorry, Master Alana replied. Siko put his hand on Alana's shoulder and said. Now come on and I'll buy you something to eat. Alana looked at him funny and said. Master, the food here is free, she said seriously. The Grand Master laughed and replied. Yes I know. It's a figure of speech, a surprised look appeared on her face. Oh, okay, of course Master, let's go then, she said and they walked the hall to the cafeteria. 1.200.002 years A.B.Y. Sith Temple. Korriban. Darth Bruticus ran to the lightsaber training area. He entered and saw Lord Sin holding 4 students 6 feet in the air. Ah, Force choke. That's one of my favorites. The Grand Master said as he leaned against a wall eating a piece of fruit. You think that you can kill me? Lord Sin said dropping the students and walking over to the other side of the room. He took off his shirt and set it on the floor, as some of the students stared at the Sith tattoos and lightsaber scars on his chest and back and gasped aloud. He unclipped 2 dual lightsabers and turned them on. Every student in the room gasped for no one had ever seen a red dual lightsaber, let alone 2 of them. The area training droids ran to Darth Bruticus and asked. Aren't you going to intervene? One asked him. The Grand Master shook his head and spoke. No, it's Lord Sin's choice and his class. If someone gets out of line then it is up to him to deal with it and, if you don't listen to his specific instructions, Darth Bruticus said as the droids ran out of the room. Lord Sin started spinning the lightsabers and he threw the 2 of them at the students. One saber took their heads off and sent them rolling across the floor, and the other saber cut them through their torsos before they could even turn on a lightsaber. The sabers flew around the room as the rest of the students dropped to the floor, or watched in horror as the sabers did their master's bidding. They returned to Lord Sin's sides and turned themselves off as he clipped them back to their positions and grabbed his shirt and put it back on. Now, do you want to learn or screw around? Lord Sin asked as Darth Bruticus walked over to his friend and finished his sentence. You're dead. The Sith Grand Master left and went to see how Darth Lucratus was doing with his slaves that just arrived. 2 days later on Coruscant. The Jedi Council was in the Chancellor's office discussing the disturbing subject. We cannot alert the Senate or the public about the current events that have happened. If word does get out, then many enemies will take advantage and attack. The Chancellor said as he slowly sat down in his chair and took a drink of water. Water anyone? He asked. The Jedi all shook their heads. I think we should notify the other councils, and the other Grand Masters need to know of this terrible incident. Chancellor Ashcraft said, leaning back in his chair. I've known that woman since she was a small girl and never knew her to hold a grudge or get upset at anyone. Something evil is at work here. I don't know what to do. The Chancellor added. 1.200.002 years. A.B.Y. Sith Temple. Korriban. Darth Bruticus rose from his hoverchair and spoke to the other masters. My friends, I have summoned you here because you are the best, the deadliest, and worth of the name Sith. You all make up the new council with me as its head. He stood as if he went into a trance and tilted his head back. He started levitating as some of the other Sith masters looked around at each other like they had never seen anything like that before. Darth Lucratus smiled and said, "He's thinking." The Grand Master opened his eyes and spoke in a demonic voice. We will be known as the new Brotherhood of Darkness. Darth Bruticus floated to the floor and spoke again. The Jedi are well too organized and too numerous for us to take on and survive. Master Tavion and Master Lilith are training all of the apprentices. Master Taba has a plan that will hit the Republic on Naboo and hard. Lord Sin is heading to our citadel on Kalasta in wild space with a few of our best warriors to establish ourselves there. Master Nora has been killed by an unknown person. Not sure nor do I care about how that happened or who did it. She's too clumsy to take on someone like that and couldn't kill them. By giving up her life, she paid the price. Space outside Naboo. Kalana left Naboo and went into hyperspace. She contacted no one on the way, instead set a course for the Hoth system, a remote snowy planet that the Jedi had no presence at. In a few hours she arrived at her destination and took the ship out of hyperspace. Immediately Kalana searched for any other vehicles in the area. She noticed that 2 Republic spies were following her at a great distance, but not so great that she couldn't pick them up. She knew that they were there and she had a trap for them. The ship entered the planet's atmosphere as the spies reported their progress in. Hold your position and wait for the fleet to arrive, a voice said to the man. Yes sir, they replied back and held their positions. Kalana landed. 1.000.000 years. A.B.Y, Jedi Temple. Coruscant. Grandmaster Siko Barak sat in his best friend's room looking around. He had tried for hours to sleep but could not. The Jedi lay down and stared out of the windows. It was gloomy and raining. As he was drifting off to sleep, Grandmaster Gival's spirit appeared and sat down on the bed and watched his friend sleep. You should really try to get some sleep, my friend, Gival said as Siko Barak woke up and fell out of bed onto the floor. What are you doing here? He said. Gival laughed and helped his friend to his feet using the Force and said, I'm here to help you capture Darth Bruticus, but Siko looked at the Jedi, rubbed his eyes and looked again. Yes, it's me and I'm not a mirage, or I don't think that I am. Anyway, I've come to tell you that. Gival didn't get to finish his sentences as the Grand Master Joker continued on. Yes, I remember you saying that you're here to help us capture Darth Bruticus and then you said but what? Master Barak stated as he walked to the window as it slid open accessing him the balcony. He walked outside in the rain and looked around Coruscant. So much has happened since you death and I don't think I can accept the rank of Grand Master of the Order. Siko said looking up at the sky and letting the rain soak his head and face. Gival walked over to comfort his friend. He sat down in a chair and said, You can do it, my friend. It is your duty as a Jedi to do so. Look at all of the ones who look up to you now. The younglings, Padawans, Jedi Knights, and Masters who will look to you for guidance as they live and die by their sworn oath to protect this galaxy. If you deny this position that has been passed to you, the Jedi will be no more, and I know in my heart that you don't want that. Siko shook his head, rubbed his chin and spoke. So what were you going to say about Darth Bruticus? Gival knelt in front of him and said. He is no longer in this time, he has disappeared as if he was erased from existence. I felt his force aura one moment and then the next moment. It was gone. Master Barak stood up and wiped the water from his face and said. How can that be? How do you know this? The spirit stood up and placed his hand on Siko's shoulder. The power of the Force, he replied and smiled as he slowly faded away. The Grand Master was once again standing in the rain alone. Industrial District. Coruscant. It was dark, quiet and nearly deserted in the cantina. Jarsa had just sat down and ordered a drink when a hooded figure got up from his seat and walked over to the man at the bar. I hear that you are the best bounty hunter in the galaxy. Jarsa nodded and replied. Yes, that's the word, and I'm not cheap. The figure sat down next to him and said. This job, if you take it, will pay you more than you have ever earned before. Quote. The bounty hunter looked at the man and asked. How much? The man placed a card on the bar in front of Jarsa. I'll give you this as a down payment, and there's much more when the jobs are done, the man said, drinking his Jawa juice. Jarsa scanned the card. 250 million creds. Okay, you've got my attention, what do you want me to do, he said, getting up from the bar and went to sit with the man at a table. When communicating you will address me as Lord Taba. I have a hollow projection of this person that I want exterminated. He pulled a small device from his pocket, set it on the table and turned it on. A hollow of a person appeared and Taba spoke again. Can you kill this person? Jarsa sat back in his chair and stared at the hollow figure for a moment. He sipped his drink as Lord Taba snapped his fingers. The bartender came over with an unknown black wine bottle and 2 glasses. He poured the 2 of them a drink. He handed a glass to Jarsa and watched him sip the wine. It was very, very smooth and didn't burn as he swallowed it down. It tasted fruity and was the most excellent tasting wine he had ever had. He set the glass down and leaned forward and said, "Yes, I can kill this person, but 250 will not be enough to do the job." The hooded figure pulled another card from his pocket and threw it at Jarsa, who once again scanned it. You're giving me 1,250,000,000 creds as a down payment, he whispered. Lord Taba nodded his head and drank the wine. You finish the job and a few side jobs and I'll pay you a big bonus, the man said as the bounty hunter grabbed his glass and downed the drink. Jarsa nodded and said, You need me, you just call and I'll be there. Lord Taba stood up and bowed to the bounty hunter. Thank you Jarsa Fett for your help, and you may keep the wine, Lord Taba said as he turned and walked to the cantina's exit. Wait, Jarsa yelled as he caught up to the man, holding the bottle in his hand. What kind is it? He asked. Lord Taba turned to face him and said, The skull and the dark saber dot, and it's 500,000 years old. I'll contact you very soon, he said, walking away. Fett stood at the entranceway and watched Taba until he faded into the night. He left the cantina for his ship. Master, it is done, the man said in his intercom. Good. Good. Now it's time for the next phase of the plan. Return home, Darth Taba, you have done well. Sith Temple. Korriban. Darth Lucratus entered the hangar and saw that his slaves had arrived. He got closer and noticed that his slaves had brought some new faces. Who are they? He asked. They are refugees and slaves from Corellia, a Sith slave said and bowed to his master. Line them all up. Now. Lucratus said as the slave bowed once again and ran over to give his master's orders to the others. While the refugees and slaves were lining up, in walked Captain Holm. He was a former officer in the Republic Navy who abandoned them and now serves the Sith. Darth Sin had returned for some supplies and approached Darth Lucratus. Can I borrow your slaves for a moment to stock the supply ships? Lord Sin asked. The Dark Lord nodded and replied. Go ahead, Darth, and put that idiot to work as well. He pointed to Captain Holm and ordered everyone to load the ships, but he made the captain do most of the work. A few hours later the supplies were loaded and Lord Sin was on his way to another citadel somewhere in the galaxy. Darth Lucratus once again had the slaves and refugees line up. Everyone did what they were told except Holm. He started complaining about his body aching and he needed a massage and, silence, Darth Lucratus yelled. Walking to the front of the line he saw everyone obeyed except Holm. Captain, get in line. You'll get food and rest soon enough, the Dark Lord said as he paced back and forth. No, someone yelled. The Dark Lord walked over to the captain. Did you say something to me? The Dark Lord asked. The captain looked up at him and said. No, General, it wasn't me. Darth Lucratus shook his head at Holm and said. It's Darth, not General. The captain once again spoke sarcastically at the Dark Lord. I'm sorry, Admiral, for the misunderstanding, Colonel. It will never happen again, Sergeant. Is that okay with you, Major? Darth Lucratus turned and started pacing across the floor as the Corellian refugees and slaves stood in line before him. He walked the line back and forth again and again. He was doing it on purpose to trap the first one that slipped up, and they were his. Captain Holm couldn't stand still. He was a very arrogant and impatient man. He had no idea why the Dark Lord was holding them up like this. As Darth Lucratus walked by again, the captain spoke. Sir, I don't know what this is about, but I'm tired, hungry, and my feet hurt. The Dark Lord stopped and gave Holm an evil look. You're all dismissed.